Hey neighbor, welcome back to ARTV. My name is John, and it's time for a review of the debut album Heaven and Hell that comes after a long string of singles over the past few years from the American pop artist Ava Max. I really do love pop music, and I felt excited about Ava Max after hearing the single Sweet But Psycho. It's so ridiculously catchy, the synthesizers are just tempting to dive back into over and over again. It seemed like the producers, such as Red One and Circuit, were kind of reading the best qualities that she could offer. I enjoyed her range, everything was just coming together, and it seemed promising. I ended up hearing two more singles from this project, those being So Am I, which was co-written with Charlie Puth, in addition to Kings and Queens, which might go a bit overboard on the preachiness and the kind of overly woke compensation, but it's still a really good pop song. It breaks out a guitar solo, which is rather unconventional in 2020. So was I excited for this project? You bet your ass. I want to love pop, I want to dive into it, and especially if it's dance pop that's inspired by the likes of early Lady Gaga, then I'm probably going to be on board. Ultimately, after all this time and the release of her debut album Heaven and Hell, I find that it's kind of a case of playing your best cards first, and the rest of the house of cards just kind of starts to come crashing down after that. This isn't what I would call an abysmal album, but we're going to talk about what makes it so forgettable as a whole. First off, I will say that I respect what Ava Max is attempting to do with her artistry, the fact that she's trying to make cohesive pop albums. That's something that you don't see every day. God knows I've listened to ones that just feel like a compilation of singles, and while this can kind of fall into that trap at times, I see that she tried to make each side have its different feel, the heaven and the hell, and also she tries to use her voice for women, for those who feel underrepresented or maybe stepped on in life, so I got those vibes immediately bleeding through on So Am I, and I was excited to see what she would do from there. Unfortunately, literally half of the songs released as singles before Heaven and Hell even hit shelves, and I think this record does have its disadvantages when it comes to maybe the singles, the lyrics, whatever, but one of the biggest issues staring it right in the face is that it can taste good at first, but the best analogy I could come up with is that it's like a piece of gum. You chew it for a little bit and you're like, this is great, this is definitely tasting so good, but you've chewed on it for a minute and you're like, this is losing all flavor. I want to spit this out immediately. It's not really one specific thing that tanks this album, it's just kind of an amalgamation of some of the worst qualities of songs. Like I mentioned, you want to skip about halfway through, or maybe she's doing something really annoying with her vocals, like the bridge of the track OMG What's Happening, where she lets out a scream and a really cringy spoken word portion. It's an album that doesn't seem to know when to play to her strengths, and she doesn't have to be the most original character and figure in pop out there, but when the production is right, like a song like Tattoo, which is a straight up banger, it works for her. But when she doesn't have the writing or the production to back it up, we get a train wreck like Salt. For fans of basic radio pop that don't really care all that much about the lyrics, maybe they just want to take a little bit of a relatable message and then bop around the room to it, then this might get the job done for you. But in a year where we've had some amazing pop albums like Future Nostalgia by Dua Lipa, it's hard to imagine why I would ever seek this out when I could just go there and dance the night away, but also not cringe. Born to the Night, for example, she samples the 80s classic Major Tom, Coming Home. It's been covered so many times, and I just feel that her version of that melody doesn't do anything for me, and the rest of the track, especially that underwhelming pre-chorus where it's just woo and a lot of different exaggerations and extended phrases of words, it kind of all plays on my nerves and these pet peeves that I just can't deal with. As I mentioned, this album is split into two halves, those of course being Heaven and Hell. They both have 7 songs on them. I think I'm personally leaning a little bit more towards the first half, Heaven. It starts off really enticing with some great production on the title track, Heaven. It's only about 90 seconds long, but it really works for me. We move into Kings and Queens after that, which slays, but then the train stops rolling on Naked, which is so hard not to just facepalm at, because how many times have we heard these lyrics? Oh, you can take off all my clothes, but never actually see me naked, because I'm not like most girls, I'm layered and dynamic, and unfortunately, that paints a bigger problem with this record, where I kind of start to feel like I'm not like most girls, the album. There's just very little to be found in terms of originality, and while I do prefer some of the songs like Torn or Kings and Queens or Heaven or Tattoo, I just don't feel that they live up to the standard that she was setting early on with those flamethrower singles. Look, I expect repetition in pop music, but I feel the second half of this album in particular really just kind of starts to go overboard, and I start to get exhausted of the feelings that she's putting out there. A track like Belladonna seems interesting from a distance, and it does feel darker as the second half is intended to, and I do think this is one of the better songs, but it starts to kind of show you this bigger underlying issue. Who's Laughing Now is so ridiculously by the numbers that I find myself skipping over it every single time. Rumors is that ridiculously repetitive song that tries to beat the dead horse and just fails miserably. And then Salt, possibly one of the worst songs, if not the worst song on this album. I hate the way that she paints herself as this, oh, well, I look so damn good that I've cried up all my tears, no more salt left for you, boy. It's just so wildly inconsistent because it starts off really interesting in that second half. Take You to Hell has some really great production. I like the hook of the song. I find it already stuck in my head. And it closes with Sweet But Psycho, but it's like, why is that there? That feels a lot brighter. Maybe the lyrical content, but obviously we needed the streams, so we had to tack it on? I don't know, guys, this album just feels really undercooked to me. She had more than enough time, and the songs, the writing, it's just not fully there. There's some absolute bangers on here that I would recommend checking my favorites, least favorites down below. Pull some out for yourself, give them a go, because again, pop music can be really good, really fun, and it can have a message, but she just kind of repeats herself or else forgets to show up to the party at all. Overall, for the debut album Heaven and Hell by Ava Max, I'm giving this a 2.5 out of 5. Thanks a lot for stopping by and checking out my review. If you enjoyed the discussion, regardless of if you agree with me or not, then drop a like on the video, subscribe if you're new in town. If you want to see more of my recent reviews, then you can tap the links on screen now. All of my socials, including my Twitch, my Patreon, everything like that, those are linked down below. And outside of that, I got nothing else for you today. I'll see you soon for more on ARTV.